Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Small Cap Discoveries conference call. Today on our call, we have CEO Gordon Deans to provide an update on Aurora Solar Technologies. Aurora Solar trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol ACU and on the OTC under AACTF. The company is trading at 35.5 cents with roughly 120 million shares outstanding, or about a $42 million market cap. I'd now like to hand it over to Paul Andreola.
Great, thanks, Trevor. Gord, happy to have you back here. We touched base with you a couple months ago. You put out some news recently that we wanted to get sort of a clear understanding what it all meant. So happy to have you here. And like we always like to do with these updates, why don't you give us a 5 to 10 minute sort of summary on exactly what Aurora does?
All right. Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you, everyone. So the company overall is in the field of providing the means to be able to get more out of your solar panel and cell manufacturing operations. So our customers, we focus mainly on solar cells, which are the elements that go within the panel. If you look at a solar panel, you'll see a bunch of squares about 160 centimeters on each side, and those are the cells. They generate the electricity in the panel. So we sell to the companies that make those, which are primarily located in China and throughout East Asia. And what we provide is measurement systems, and we're in the process of bringing out a new product we're pretty excited about that provides intelligence and yield management solution for the manufacturing to make it more profitable. So it's all about quality control, all about throughput, all about yield and profitability in their manufacturing. So the big thing with these companies is this is a high volume business with relatively low gross margins. And the costs they have for the manufacturing are relatively invariant, just basically on the level of volume. So if they can sell their products at a slightly higher price because the quality is a little bit better, then that goes directly to their bottom line. And that is really what our products are focused on. So we measure the results of some of the critical processes that actually have a big impact on how much electricity the solar cells generate when they're tested at the end of the production line, and they're sold by how much they're priced on how much electricity they generate. And our new product, which we call Insight, is a software product which we will be selling on a subscription basis to the customers. And what this does is this looks at the big data that's generated during these tests at the end of the line and uses that data plus tracking information about how the raw material moved through the plant to be able to tell people which of their machinery elements are doing the manufacturing optimally, which ones need some fine tuning or some improvement, troubleshoot problems that occur from time to time in the production lines, and also give the engineers continuous intelligence on how to run the line at the highest possible throughput and the highest yield as well. These operations have been done manually in the past or by using a lot of expensive instrumentation, which is difficult for these companies to afford. So we're providing them with a solution that automates a lot of manual processes, reduces the amount of workload involved in running their plants to the best possible capability, and gives them the ability to be able to find out things about their plant that they can use in order to increase their profitability that they previously haven't been able to find out at all. So we're pretty excited about that. We're just getting that into the market now. So the company, as Paul said and Trevor said, is we're traded on the TSX Venture Exchange. We're a clean tech player. Very exciting market to be in right now. We're really enthusiastic about how this is growing and how this has now become mainstream as opposed to something that was used on satellites and remote locations in the past. And we're all pretty committed to green energy and renewables in general. So with that, Is there anything else that you'd like me to describe, Paul, with regards to the company?
Well, you know, I've got a bunch of questions that I'll start asking you, but even before I do that, I've got to mention, I should have mentioned earlier, but I am a shareholder of Aurora Solar. So as we go through these questions, you know, please understand that I might have a slightly biased interest in the company. Maybe sort of reintroduce the opportunity, the size of the opportunity for Aurora, specific to what you guys are now selling into the marketplace.
Okay, well, the overall market, so I'll start from the 30,000 foot level and then work my way down. The solar energy industry has been growing for the past couple of decades at a CAGR of 25% a year. So that's pretty high growth. Expectation is that it's going to continue that way. So you know, it's basically got at least in, you know, over the next few years, there's no ceiling on that growth. Within that industry, the total amount of capital that's spent every year on expansion of manufacturing or renewal of manufacturing operations is several $billion US a year. And within that market, the portion that we play into, which is the instrumentation and control within the manufacturing plants for solar cells, is in excess of $500 million a year and growing at that, you know, 25% roughly CAGR. So it's a pretty attractive market segment to be in. Now within that 500,000 plus, or sorry, 500 million plus market, excuse me, we address a portion of that right now, but with the new products that we're coming out with, the Insight product mainly, we'll be expanding our portion of that market. It's to do with all the instruments that you could put in the plant, plus these end-of-the-line testers as well. So, in roughly speaking, that's the size of the market. The main thing that is really important, I think, for everybody to understand is that the nature of this is such that it's playing into a larger industry, which I would call the global energy industry. And so what we're doing is that we're now in a situation where we're taking market share away from coal and other non-renewable sources of energy, which are orders of magnitude larger than solar. And there's a big push to continue that. So this is a super high growth area and long-term growth as well.
You mentioned Insight. Now that's something that those that know what the opportunity is with Insight, the software package, are the most excited about. Maybe let's get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of exactly what Insight does and what it does for customers specifically.
Okay, so one of the biggest issues that these manufacturers run into is that this is a fairly complex type of manufacturing. So solar cells are actually semiconductors. I mean, they're not memory chips and they're not microprocessors, but the material is a semiconductor material. And what you're doing is you're treating it using various thermal and chemical processes in order to turn it into an inert hunk of silicon into something that actually generates electricity, and to do it in a way that's cost effective and efficient is tricky. So the manufacturing itself, while you know the steps themselves, you can describe them in a relatively straightforward way. The raw material is changed and different parameters interact with each other from step to step. So it's a little bit like cooking a souffle. If you do it wrong, it'll fall flat. And the big thing here is that most of the time they do it pretty well. But when something goes wrong, boy, it really goes wrong. So the most important thing for these companies is to keep the plant running and to make sure that they're getting the highest possible efficiency, which is basically relates to how much power the cells will generate when they're finished being manufactured, when they're tested at the end of the line, because that determines their selling price and therefore determines the profitability. over 60% of the selling price of a solar cell is cost of raw materials. So, and then there's about another 25% that is the cost to manufacture it. It's a pretty electricity intensive exercise. So by the time you get to the end, you've got about a 15 to 20% gross margin on your manufacturing. And this is something that is therefore highly sensitive to any variations in the quality and therefore the selling price at the end. So that sets the stage. Now, when you look at how you do this, and keep that 15 to 20% gross margin in your minds, one way to make sure that you know exactly what's going on in all the steps, and you can keep tabs on things and make sure that anything that's going off the rails gets right back on again, is to buy millions of dollars worth of instruments and then plug them into all the different parts of the manufacturing steps that exist, and track all the material through the plant, collect all that data, and then have a raft of physicists and engineers who analyze it and decide what to do on a day-to-day basis with respect to how they're doing the manufacturing. And there are two companies that do that. One's an ex-German company, and the other one only does it on one line, and they're also have European heritage. The one that only does it on the one line only did it on the one line, and then they said, this is way too expensive. We can't make a profit if we do this, so we're not going to do it again. All the other manufacturers, most of which are in mainland China, just haven't done that at all. So they use manual methods and a little bit of hunting and pecking to figure out where they can optimize and so forth. So in the end, there's a ton of missed opportunities to be able to get more profitable. There's a lack of ability to be able to invest in traditional ways to do that, but there is this test at the end of the production line of every single wafer, or every single finished cell, I should say. And that generates a large database of very, very useful information that's never been exploited. But that's what we do with Insight. So we mine that data, just like it's a data science, data mining exercise. And we combine that with tracking of the material through the plant. And by mining that data, we can tell, as you go through the various steps, what the effectiveness of the machinery implementing those steps is. And with the wafer tracking, we know which machines are operating better than other machines at any given step. We also know how the different steps interact with each other. Remember what I said about this being a complex semiconductor problem. So the interactions amongst them, that's a very, very difficult thing to get. So in the end, what we do with all this is we provide the means for people to be able to rapidly troubleshoot issues that are often hard to find and track down. And we provide them with the means to be able to have what amounts to virtual instrumentation without spending all the money on it. You'll still need some instruments at various steps, but doing it completely end-to-end is unnecessary in this case. And the ability to be able to then do optimization to get the most out of each of the pieces of equipment or machinery in the plant, and therefore increase your yield and have the highest possible percentage of high performing and therefore high price products at the end of the line. So this has all just been previously manual, or else in the one case, 1.5 cases, where people have spent an excessive amount of money to do it themselves.
So, so correct me if I'm wrong. If as far as the market's concerned, it's either you do this manually or you use a product like this. There's really nothing else out there that can do what you guys are looking to do for these customers.
That's correct. Okay,
perfect. Now, a couple days ago, you put out some news, and lots to unpack in that news. Can you feel free to sort of explain what the news was all about?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, what we wanted to let people know about was the progress on Insight, and we are releasing the first version of the product formally, which has been in beta trials for 2 years now. We're calling that Insight Essentials. So this is what, when you use high-tech industry jargon, is known as a minimum viable product. So this is our formal entry into the market, and we have a lead customer lined up. We are in the process of getting them set up with that product. They've been one of the beta trial customers, and we hope to be able to announce some news soon on getting that going. The next steps after that will be then to start to roll the product out to more people as well, particularly in mainland China, where the majority of the market is for us. This initial customer is in East Asia, but they're not in China. The other thing about the Insight is that we signed an agreement with a company called Wave Labs, which is one of the 2 largest manufacturers of these end-of-the-line testers. And these are essential elements within a production line. They're in every single line. So with Wave Labs, this was in a previous release, but I do want to highlight this again. We have both a technical agreement and also a co-marketing agreement with them as well. They have a fairly significant and growing embedded base within the industry, in the manufacturing plants. And they also have advanced capabilities because of the nature of their testing technology that allows us to be able to provide capabilities for understanding what's going on in the production line in each of the pieces of equipment that go beyond the minimum viable product. So I won't get into too much on the technical aspects of that, but these testers normally simulate sunlight. That's what they do. So then you simulate sunlight, see what the power generated is, and then you classify the solar cell on that basis. With the Wave Labs tester, we can also, because they use LEDs, they can independently provide blue and red light as well. And the blue light tells you about certain portions of the cell, and the red light tells you about other certain portions of the cell. And with that information, we can tie that in a much more useful and detailed way to individual processing steps during the manufacturing as well, and how good they are. So that's an important element of this as well. So we're really looking forward to working with them. We're in constant contact with them in terms of putting together our plan to get to the market. Other elements are to do with the work that we're doing on getting our systems up and running on the instrumentation side with our customers. So as you probably know from reading the article, is that we have, or the release I should say, is that due to the pandemic and the inability to send some of our experts, some of that's going a little bit more slowly than we would like it to. But the good news is that we have been making progress on that. What it's allowed us to do as well is to make sure that products are good fits for these new environments that we've experienced with the large amount of installations we've done over the last little while. We've hardened the product, we've improved its capabilities, so that's getting us a little bit closer on all of these things. And the other thing is that we've got the instrumentation product positioned for 2 new technologies that are going to be the next ones in the higher efficiency cell manufacturing. So the current technology is something called PERC, and it's not related to coffee. It's a dorky engineering term that stands for passivated emitters and rear contacts. If anybody wants to know more about that, then I'm happy to tell you, but I'm not really going to get into it now. The new ones, we described them in the release, and they're right now, PERC has about a 22% conversion efficiency, meaning that 22% of the energy in the sunlight gets turned into electricity by the cell. And the new ones are roughly 23 to 25%. Now that doesn't sound like a lot more, but the theoretical physical limit is about 29%. So it's actually a pretty significant increase, and it means more money in the hands of the manufacturers. So they really want to do this kind of stuff. So we have systems that are in China running with one of our customers, and that one of those technologies called heterojunction technology, and they're running in production now, although it's small scale at this point. And we've just been doing some evaluation testing and have quoted on TopCon, which is the other technology. for one of our existing customers as well, who's one of the top 10 manufacturers in the world for solar cells. So we're pretty excited about that. We're looking forward to seeing these new technologies develop, because basically, if they're putting in new plants and turning over the old ones, that means more sales for us. So that's a good thing.
Perfect, perfect. Gord, I want to remind everybody that if you've got some questions you want me to ask Gord, there's a chat function here. Feel free to use it and ask any questions, and I'll try to get it over to Gord. So obviously the pandemic is causing some disruptions. A lot of your clients are in China, like you mentioned. Anything else that you guys are doing to try to mitigate some of the issues right now while we're waiting until travel restrictions are lightened up? I saw in the press release you mentioned a partnership with UMS. Anything you can tell us about that group?
Yeah, so we have worked informally with them for some time now. This is a China-based company that started out, they're part of a larger group called Intratech, and they started out in the field of contract manufacturing, but since then they actually had to develop their own solutions for how they ran their plants, which were basically Industry 4.0, information technology, tracking, and so forth. So they have traditionally been in other industries other than solar, but they decided, we want to get into supplying into the solar manufacturing industry. So they've been marketing some of their products, but also ours. And in fact, this thing I just described where we have heterojunction running, we sold that through them. So we've also done other sales through them. And what we decided to do was, given the fact that we've got some of these challenges, and the travel restrictions have been around for about a year now, as we said, let's work with these guys a little bit more closely. So we've formalized the relationship in an agreement for them to do marketing for us. They have kept a number of units from a customer that decided to take a different direction, and we've actually already quoted with them since we announced that just a few days last week. So this is something that's moving fairly quickly, and we're really we have a good track record with them in terms of the informal work that we did with them, and we're now pleased to be moving forward with them on a more formal basis in China. So that's one thing that will help mitigate the travel. The other thing that's nice about them is because they have that manufacturing expertise, and they've gotten themselves into selling some of the things they developed for their own use for the purposes of material tracking and keeping track of staff and so forth in the manufacturing plants, is they actually have a pretty reasonable understanding of how Insight fits in. They don't have the expertise to do anything like that, but they make a good partner in terms of understanding information technology and information handling within a manufacturing environment.
Awesome. Okay, why don't we open it up some questions? We have some here. I've got a question here. It says semiconductor manufacturing capacities in short supply for computational graphic chips. Is this shortage affecting the solar industry's ability to expand?
No. It's interesting. That's a really interesting and insightful question. In the early days of solar, when I first got exposed to it, which was around 2007, at that time, they would use some of the same sources for the silicon wafers, and as semiconductor did. But what happened over time was that semiconductor while it's a high volume industry, it just simply was not growing at the rate that solar was and is. So eventually people started to dive in and make both purified silicon and also the wafers specifically for solar. Now, most of that, if not, well, there's one small portion that's done outside China, but basically China owns the raw material supply chain for solar now. And I wouldn't say they're entirely decoupled, but I would say they're about 99% decoupled.
Great. Okay, next question. With the introduction of Insight, how much would you expect your typical sale to increase per plant?
That's a very good question. So I can't really say increase because if I answer that, then it kind of is very much dependent on, what's happening quarter to quarter in terms of their expansion plans. I'll put it a slightly different way in answering the question. So the existing products sell on the basis of plant expansions or retrofits, mainly expansions. And these tend to come in lumpy fashion, right? So basically the way it happens, and it's not uncommon from other industries, is that everybody decides they're all going to expand at the same time. So we get a bunch of orders and then we fulfill them. Then they spend some time digesting that and working out their financing for the next one. So that takes, a few quarters or so to get done. And then there's a bunch, then there's a flurry of orders again. Insight addresses the existing embedded base as well as expansions. So while some of the older plants are never going to see Insight because people just simply won't say that it's not worth making any kind of investment in this when we're running it just to get to the end of life, and then we're going to do something new with it. A significant portion of the embedded base is what we're addressing with Insight as well as these expansions. The other thing is that sales of hardware are on a CapEx basis. In other words, the order's placed, it gets paid for, and then we move on. With Insight, our intention is to sell it more like people sell materials or services, so on a subscription basis in this sense. And so then the purpose of that is to get a recurring revenue stream and to smooth out the revenue somewhat. Having said that, an average size plant, which everything's measured in watts in this industry, so this would be about 5 gigawatts out of 150 gigawatts of total capacity, growing at 25% a year. We would expect to get revenue in up to about $500,000 per plant per year.
And give us a sense of how many plants are out there and the number that are being added every year.
Well, if I divide that by the current capacity, so they're all different sizes, right? So this is just kind of taking an average size. So if we take the average size, let's say there's 30 right now, growing at 25% a year.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so we've got a beta site, beta client already. Are you able to tell us what kind of increase in yield that they've been seeing, or any kind of metrics as far as improvement with Insight?
Not yet, but I will. That's part of the first step with them. We've defined a set of formal evaluation criteria, which include various measures of utility, including that one. Because we want to use that for selling purposes with others. So we would expect to see, thinking it through, roughly a 10% or increase in average efficiency, perhaps a bit higher. With these guys, they actually are already pretty good at running their plant. They're one of the better ones. So it's probably going to be closer to the 10%. Some of the other ones we'd expect to see it get higher than that. And that's in terms of the average output. But a big one as well that I suggest everyone keep their eye on is how much money are we saving them in terms of their operations costs as well. So remember I said that everybody does all these things manually right now in terms of saying, okay, we're going to try a different recipe out, see if we can get a little bit more out of the manufacturing line using this new recipe in one particular set of machines or whatever. And there's a surprising amount of money spent trying those things out, because you have to, first of all, any new recipe is developed in a laboratory, and then going from a laboratory to an actual production, oftentimes there's things you didn't take into account, so you have to try it out. To try it out, you have to take things offline, which means they're not producing. So there's a cost of lost production. And the other thing you have to do is you also have to have experts' time doing not just the experiments that you're going to do with it, but also the analysis and everything else. And that adds up to a fair amount of money. And it takes a while. Like we have one customer who changed a recipe about a year ago, and we were tracking that process fairly closely. It took them about 2 months to get it right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. And as far as this Beta Insight customer right now, does it cover just one plant or is it multiple plants?
Sorry, say that again?
The beta customer that you guys have right now, does it cover more than one plant or is it just one plant?
It's one. They have talked about expanding it. They have two. There's a third one as well, but I'm not sure whether it's up and running yet. But they have 2 or 3 in total, and they have talked about expanding it after they've got it going in this first one.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So give us a sense of just general timelines. When do you expect to have data back that's ready for the market, and when do you think you'll be fully commercializing so your launch?
So with the lead customer, we are already in the process of installing the system. Usually it's the other way around. You get the agreement signed and then you do that. But with them, we have a long-standing relationship. So we said, let's just get on with it while we work on the paperwork. So that's happening. We want to get it up and in use before people take their holidays for Chinese New Year, which is this year is happening on February the 12th. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, it's pretty pan-Eastern Asia, so it's not just China. And there's 1 or 2 weeks of time where everybody goes on vacation. It's a little bit like Christmas is here and in Europe. So we expect to see them actually start to do the formal evaluations after that's over. So that'll be in the second half last third of February and going into March and the beginning of April for that work and quantifying it. In the meantime, that doesn't mean we're not going to be marketing to others, but we're not going to put a big push on that until we have some numbers from this company that we can quote and use in our business development with other customers. So the other thing I've got to say is to a degree, how quickly we're able to move on this is going to be conditioned by how quickly the international travel restrictions start to ease off, and our ability to send key people who can work with the scientists and engineers in the customer sites to make sure they're very successful with this. So our intention is that in the second half of this year is that we'll see our initial work in China with one of the major players there. And when I say one, I mean one because initially we want to focus very, very intensely on making sure that one of the ones that everybody looks up to has a good, successful experience with this, and then we can use that as a reference within China as well. And that's how you get things done in China is you don't take out ads in magazines. Trade shows are sort of important, but the biggest thing is have you shown that you make it work with one of my peers, in which case I'm interested. So that's what our intention and that's what our market introduction strategy is.
Gotcha. We keep mentioning China. Are you looking at any opportunities outside of Asia, Europe, or any of the other manufacturing areas?
I have a couple of confidential things on the go at this point. They're relatively small scale, but yes. But I do have to say that still, by far the largest market for solar manufacturing is within mainland China. And there are other areas in East Asia, Malaysia, for example, in particular, that are building up, significant manufacturing capacity as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. And we'll end on this this question here. What is your vision of the company in 2 years? What metrics are you going to use for company success?
I think the biggest thing is, and I'll say this, somewhat blue skyish, is within the next few years, hopefully not too many. We'd like to be in a position where we've built the business up sufficiently to graduate to the main board. on the TSX. For us, that's certainly a sign that that we've done well. On a more prosaic level, from a standpoint of the revenue for the company, we want to in the not too distant future, like we're looking, say 2 years out, is to be into a few tens of millions of dollars of revenue based on growth and insight. And at a product level, for us, insight is it's a product in its own right, but it's also a piece of infrastructure for us as a product. So insight, because what it's doing is it's handling information and presenting that in a useful way to people and allowing them to do better things with their manufacturing. It's a means to be able to consolidate and group and bring together sources of information. So these are our existing instruments, other instruments that we have in our product roadmap that we will move forward on. So it's almost like we can build a family of products around that, and that will also give us an opportunity to continue to grow and build out the revenue base for the company, and possibly other aspects such as bringing in other technology from outside as well from time to time.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I lied. There is another question that one of our listeners has asked, so I'm going to fire it off here. But it says back in October, you said the sort of average savings per plant would be about 10 million per year. Is that in the ballpark? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Actually, we would expect that at a minimum. Well, I shouldn't say at a minimum, because then I'm sticking myself out on too much on a limb there, because it varies by customer to customer and how well they run things already. But that's a correct ballpark, and we would hope to see it higher than that. The thing to keep in mind is when I say a 5 gigawatt plant, everybody thinks, okay, 5. That's a number I can understand. I can count those here. But when you translate that into solar cells, that's currently roughly 900 million solar cells a year they're making.
Wow.
Don't think of this as making Pentium processors. Think of this as making cookies.
Yeah.
And think of all the grocery stores and all the shelves in grocery stores around the world that have cookies on them. That's a lot.
I'm going to look at cookies very differently from now on here.
Yeah.
Why don't we wrap up? If there's anything that I've sort of missed, or any sort of key message you want all our listeners to walk away with today, what would that be?
We're driving the company forward so that it's a company built on providing the means for the customers to make more money through the intelligent use of information their plant generates. And right now, they don't have a very good way of doing that. It's painful for them to try to do that. So they're limited in their capacity to increase their profitability. And that's what we're enabling for them, is more profitability. That's one. Can I say 2?
Sure, as many as you want.
We're in an industry that's going to basically make coal obsolete within 50 years, and gas. Well, maybe not for your car, but for electricity generation. So it's not just about being green, which is all good, but it's also about the growth, 25% a year consistently.
It's amazing. So mission critical piece of product that you're going to be able to deliver here within the next sort of 6 months to an industry that's growing on average about 25% a year. Mm-hmm. Pretty impressive opportunity. Gordon, if anybody wants more information, what's your website address?
Aurora Solar Tech, that's TECH.com.
Awesome. Pleasure today to speak with CEO of Aurora Solar, Gordon Deans. Gordon, thanks as always for joining us today, and look forward to the next update.
All right. Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone.